Welcome back to the Winter Growers Podcast. Today, my guests are Ellie Goldstein and Dan Bryant of Small Holding Farm in Morganton, North Carolina. Recommended by a fan of the show as young, new, year-round farmers, Ellie and Dan started their farm in 2020 during the early months of the pandemic. Ellie has a background in psychology and works part-time in the mental health field, and Dan is a certified arborist and carpenter. Skills that have undoubtedly helped their recent transition into starting a farm and homestead with a focus on year-round production and building community. Farming on 1 acre with 3 high tunnels, they prioritize building soil using primarily no-till methods, and they experiment with finding the best ways their bodies, the land, and their business can benefit and grow from these choices. I appreciate the mindful approach Dan and Ellie have taken in building their farm and business, and I hope our conversation can offer other new farmers inspiration as well. This episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and more. All powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. Tractors and attachments are on sale now. Find sale pricing and your nearest dealer at bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. So our work has always been about keeping farming information as free and open to the public as we possibly can, and that won't change. One way in which we make that possible, though, is through advertising on podcasts like this, on our YouTube channel, on our forum, and so on. So if you are a small farm-related company selling seeds or tools or something growers could use, or if you're an organization putting on some conference or offering a grant or looking for farmer contributors or something else farm-related that I'm not thinking of, get in touch with us at farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com. That's farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com. Supporting us helps to grow this work and grow farmers. So we all thank you. Again, that email is farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com, or you can find our contact information at notillgrowers.com. All right. Thanks, y'all. Enjoy the show.
Okay, welcome to the Winter Growers Podcast. Today I have Dan and Ellie of Small Holding Farm in North Carolina. So these guys were actually a fan recommendation, which I always love to get. I will ask at the end of one season for recommendations, and you guys came to the top of the list. You are also a relatively new farm, and I love to interview farms that have started with kind of year-round winter growing as part of their intention. So it'll be exciting to see kind of what inspired that and what you think of it, I guess, a couple years, 3 years or so in. So welcome to the show, Dan and Ellie.
Hi, thanks for having us, Clara.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor.
We've been really excited ever since you reached out.
Well, thank you for making the time. I've been having fun kind of stalking your Instagram and seeing all your posts and following your journey. So you guys got started with, or you created Small Holding Farm 3-4 years ago. When did it start?
Yeah, it was during COVID. It was a COVID baby. I had a little small homestead at the time, and was toying around with the idea of starting a market garden of sorts. And then my full-time job stopped due to COVID. I was working as a carpenter in Asheville. And the idea of becoming a market garden became real pretty quick. Started doing like veggie boxes and things of that sort, really small scale.
And I think that when you first wanted to start smallholding, you were wanting to get into the restaurant business, doing like wholesale and growing specialty vegetables and greens. And then COVID hit and a bunch of restaurants shut down. And so he kind of had to rewire how the business strategy or the business plan could even work. And that's kind of how we met. Was he was like, oh, I need another person to help me restructure this business plan and get the CSA boxes going, maybe even markets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so describe the area that you guys live in. What is it already a lot of small farms? What sort of inspired you to get into this? What maybe get into a little bit of your background too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our farm has actually moved. We should say that. So we started about 15 minutes outside of Asheville, and we are a good solid hour outside of Asheville at this point. But there are a lot of small farms in this area, and we're lucky to have that community. It's really cool to get to know, a lot of our friends are small farmers. And I think it's always fun, the competition that exists amongst us all is pretty friendly.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of inspiration in that realm.
And I'll add to that. So when we were 15 minutes from Asheville, the property was a 1/4 acre or less. And so we had like one hoop house and then everything else was outside. And it was still very much like homestead property. And then when we kind of got into more than 2 markets and the CSA was growing and we kind of wanted to build the business, we just felt like we were outgrowing that plot. And so now we're in Morganton, and a huge reason that we made that move was we were looking for a little bit flatter land. So we're in Western North Carolina, which comes with a lot of mountainous terrain. And we got good at growing on a slant and on hills, but I think it was like a dream to have a little bit more flat land. And now we're a little bit more in the foothills. And we kind of luck out. We really enjoy growing year round, and we found that this property has helped significantly with just having a little bit longer of a warmer season on both sides of like winter to spring and fall to winter.
Yeah.
So that was a huge reason why, honestly, we were drawn to this area too.
And then did you both grow up in, Asheville region or North Carolina? Where did you both grow up, and what was your background with gardening or farming or any of that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, in the Ozarks, and one of my biggest inspirations actually were my grandparents. They were essentially retired farmers at the time when I came around, but they always had cattle and a large vegetable garden, and there was just a lot of family and love that surrounded that. And I feel like I've spent, my adult years trying to get back there. And I went to college at Drury University and did a biology major where I did a lot of environmental work and kind of got interested in organic farming there. And since then, I worked on a couple of small scale organic farms. I worked on Herbivore Farm in Kansas City, Missouri, and then a farm out here in Morganton, actually, Bluebird Farm, and have learned a lot through other people, but also just trial and error and learning from our own mistakes has been a big thing too.
Yeah, I think that Herbivore too, with their like no-till, and even continuing to follow them throughout our farming experience has been huge for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, so like very city urban, and I never like even dreamt or knew that farming would kind of be my path. So I went to a tiny school outside of Asheville in Swannanoa called Warren Wilson College. And they are a work school. So you work while you're in school. And I started on their compost and trash crew, which was literally sorting garbage and just learning about how that works, getting in touch with trying to go more zero waste and learning about food waste and where it comes from and how it transforms. And the area was like literally right next door to the garden that we had on campus. And so, we would use that compost sometimes in the garden. And I just kept like in between classes finding myself like petting the cat on the garden stairs. And it just felt like the right transition to start getting immersed into. And so fortunately, our garden manager at the time was also super into the no-till year-round gardening. We had a couple of heated greenhouses and just got like really, really into it. Worked a full summer there, which helped me learn a little bit more about the business side of things, doing like farmers markets and a really big CSA. And then I was studying psychology. And so afterwards, I kind of took a break from the farm and went into like pursue that academia side of things and went into residential treatment and got my master's degree in clinical mental health. So I'm also a therapist. And throughout, like once, I guess I lost my job during COVID in residential treatment, and my boss was a friend of Daniel's. And so we hadn't even met, and she was like, you should meet my buddy who's trying to start a small farm. And I was super upset that I had just lost my job. So I was like, anything works. And we met over coffee outside, and he kind of just laid out, he's like, I'm not looking for an employee. Like, I need someone to help me make this happen. And so
was that a proposition as a business partner or romantic or both?
Well, to start,
it was definitely not romantic at first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, bold, very bold if it was.
But we are married now, so
Yes. Yeah.
So
I mean, it was meant to be.
But yeah, so that's kind of been our journeys. And I think it's cool that Daniel also got to know a little bit about what Morganton was like, because it was a kind of a scary leap to move outside of Asheville for me. I felt like both of our hearts were kind of in that community. And while an hour doesn't feel like a huge thing, like Morganton is a completely different area of town, we've made it a whole new community, which I'm super, super grateful for. But
what was your property and land search like? How did you, what priorities, you mentioned about having flatter land, but what other priorities were you focused on for that search?
I mean, we were looking, it was wild. The housing market was kind of crazy when we were looking. But we wanted a house and like 2 to 3 acres of farmable land.
Well, and I think also just like financially, we had some support from our family. But other than that, Daniel had owned his last house. And so we had a little bit of that house sale, but there wasn't like a ton to put into like 100 acres, or kind of like Daniel and I both identify as like dreamers who want big farmland one day and all those things. But this felt like, okay, we need to find like a really attainable next step without going into a ton of debt. That's like one of our business models is trying to stay away from debt. And so it felt like a really smart business decision too, just in wanting to have a small farm.
Yeah. We were also a market. We had a market, and we didn't really want too much of a lag there. So we were trying to sell one property, move on to, another property and be in production by the following year. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah. And we had about 4 months, one winter to make the call. As soon as his house sold, it was like, okay, we have to find this. And honestly, I think Asheville was too expensive for us. We kept getting outbid. I think we put 5 different bids on different properties within the 20-mile radius, and it was just like impossible, which was emotional and defeating. And my mom just like extended the Zillow search, I think 60 miles. And she's like, what about this spot? And we were hesitant and did it. And we're like, this is it. Let's just try it out. And I think 12 days later, we were like signed and making it happen.
Yeah. Fell in love with the property immediately.
Getting garlic in the ground, like the same month we bought the house.
And obviously you had to expand your search but I guess what I'm trying to understand is you didn't necessarily have to really look for farm property. You just really needed some acreage and an acreage that was flat enough to set up a farm.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you kind of could look at like the single family home offerings for the most part. Is that correct?
Yeah. We were looking for just a small house with like a huge lawn or yard.
Yeah.
And do you think like long term that will, I guess, is your vision to your name is Small Holding Farm, but do you want to maintain a small holding as you see yourselves evolve as farmers and as business people?
Yeah, I definitely, I think that's like, at our core, who we are, we're homesteaders. We raise chickens for eggs for ourselves and pigs and things of that sort. And so, I think, being a homesteader for us is first, and then, then the market garden is, how we make money.
And I think, it's like a part of our identity is to like pack in as much as we possibly can, in like a beautiful, non-stressful way, but just like utilizing the space at its core. And so like, we feel like there's still so much potential on this property. There's a bit of forest that could become like a food forest. And there's
definitely
pasture that we haven't really, like literally just before coming here, we seeded cover crop for the first time on this property, or in that little spot. So there's just, I think we see so much potential, and we really like to make the full project like glow and grow versus feeling like it's already, like we're already outgrowing it or something. And so I do think that it's a part of our plan to make it feel just as comfortable and beautiful as we possibly can before changing our vision or wanting to grow.
And what were your, first inspirations for wanting to do it year round as opposed to traditional, sort of 3-season? Is it based more on North Carolina or that, slightly warmer region? Or was it based on influences you had at other farms, books, podcasts, whatever?
Yeah. To be completely honest with you, our first year of farming wasn't all that planned out. It was 2020, and we threw ourselves into it, and we had a pretty good season for our first season, and November, December hit, and we're like, okay, well, it's like we just kept going. We didn't even have a hoop house at the time. We just had a lot of row cover, heavy duty row cover, and we were growing spinach and carrots and things of that. I think we even did a Thanksgiving CSA that year, which was crazy. But then, we did get a farmer's friend hoop house, and we're like, oh, this is lovely. And I think it just, we just kept working, and we worked through the winter, and
I feel like we, as farmers, like we didn't even know what the parameters of our growing season could look like. Like we see what summer crops in spring and fall look like, but we don't really know when they would end. And for us, they kept going, and people kept wanting them.
Yeah.
And there's definitely in Asheville a winter audience of like buyers who really, really, really want vegetables. And so it just felt like there was a need. And we kind of just started challenging ourselves to see, okay, well, let's try seeding carrots in September. And if we got that germination, we knew that we could keep it going through the season. And so I feel like we learned from our mistakes, but we also learned from like, well, this worked kind of well. Let's just do it again next year and do more of it. So
do you feel like a farm of your size and in your region really needs to be year-round 4-season growing in order to make it, in order to, survive?
I feel like potentially not, but for us right now, as we continue to like invest in our soil, it's super important to get a head start in early spring with like compost and mulch and wood chips and the proper like soil management and soil health, and that's pretty expensive. And so I think that for right now, winter growing has been important financially for us and a part of the business plan, but it's also been very enjoyable for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Like we still prioritize taking a break or being able to travel, but the weeds don't grow as quickly, and it's a little bit warmer, and everything's beautiful about it.
Yeah, nothing beats going out, into one of our tunnels on like a sunny day when it's cold outside, and it's just nice in there. You take your jacket off, and it's enjoyable for us. It's not a drag at all.
And where you're located, I take it your summers aren't so brutal that you would have to sort of, take a month off or shut down just to get through. You can actually farm every month of the year.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like February and March, or pretty much February is our slowest amount of like crops in the field, but we start a ton that month. And then from then on, it's pretty much every month of the year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know some farms, further south or in that area have to shut down or minimize their production because it's just brutally difficult.
Yeah. We're pretty mild on both ends, the summer and the winter. You'll get, a week or two of extremes in both, but I mean, we're pretty lucky with the weather.
Yeah. I feel like August is the scariest month for a lot of the farms out here in terms of some people like pause their CSAs for like 2 weeks or something, but we have yet to do that. And we've continued to have tomatoes and eggplant, okra, and all the things that come with summer. So
can you describe the sort of layout of your farm that you have now? Just, sort of high tunnels, infrastructure, bed, shape, size, that kind of general details.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are in production. We are about an acre, maybe a little less. So we have currently we have 3 high tunnels, and then we have converted an old carport into our propagation house. We've ran electricity and stuff to that one, so it's heated. And we are actually in the works to get a larger heated high tunnel. We got a grant.
We got the EQIP grant,
which is amazing. But yeah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like we have like 3 fields, 100-foot, 70-foot, and then like a really short, small plot that we're wanting herbs and flowers in. But yeah.
And you're following the sort of no-till approach. How did you first, break in that soil? Did you have any tractors involved, or was it all?
We used a BCS. Yeah, we did plow initially. So we did plow initially, and then have just dialed it back. And we're using a lot of straw, wood chips, compost, kind of like that deep top layer of mulch to try to suppress weeds and stuff. And we're pretty much like completely no-till at this point.
Yeah.
There's a couple areas that we're still
like in terms of like existing fields and within our hoop houses. I think at most we maybe run the BCS, like, what would you say? Like
a couple times.
Yeah, maybe once or twice a year. But yeah, I think the straw and the cover crop has been huge. And each year we've learned just that we want to keep adding to it. I think sometimes the challenge of going from like a bed that has straw to wanting to direct seed. And, I think we've just learned that you can direct seed and work with having like a deep top layer of soil or compost or straw and all these things. So
is the straw a local resource that you have access to? Is that pretty readily available?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is available, but I feel like it's pretty pricey out here.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it doesn't come, like, you have to source getting a large amount of it to lean into the like straw no-till thing, which has been a little bit tricky for us, but we've reached out to other local farms that have done it, or we've had to kind of pinpoint where it comes from and if they've sprayed and if it's organic, and
asking lots of questions.
So many questions to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Questions are good.
Yeah.
What about sort of infrastructure for wash pack? I mean, if obviously you can't have a 3-season setup for some of your wash pack in the middle of winter. So do you have that set up, or have you made?
We kind of have, this winter, we've dedicated an area of our propagation house to wash pack. It's been pretty, we've switched areas a lot. We have a lot of like covered spaces that we've tried to put a wash pack station in, but we are actually getting ready to build one in the next couple of weeks before our spring season fully kicks off. So,
yeah, I feel like for us, in terms of infrastructure, we try to take on like 2 big projects a year in the winter, kind of partnering with doing the winter growing thing. And the wash pack has been a fun system for us to figure out. We've done pretty bare bones in the summer, just like table, sprayer, very, very simple. And I think it's helped us to really like hone in on what we need and what we want for when we do build it. I'm actually pretty grateful that we didn't like season 1 build a wash pack, because I think that we've learned a lot of like specific things that we need for what we grow.
Totally.
Which I'm super grateful for us doing that in a lot of ways, like not rushing into building everything all at once.
And do you do any storage crops? Do you have a facility for doing that, or do you hope to expand into that if not?
We have not really done a whole lot of storage crops other than garlic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And onions. Yeah.
We've done garlic and onions, and then I feel like any of the things that we could store, fortunately, unfortunately, like sell so fast at market. Like we go through them still within that year, and then we have our personal collection that's stored in our house.
Potatoes surprisingly sell faster than we thought they would.
Like every year we have to increase the amount of stored things to hopefully have something that we can store, and it still continues to sell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that definitely makes it more challenging with limited acreage, because obviously those crops need more ground. And then just the storage facility is a whole nother can of worms. Hey, podcast listeners, we're going to pause for a moment to hear from one of our show sponsors. Today's episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seeding to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. Our same-day shipping can help keep your planting schedules on track when the unexpected happens. We're here to help you grow good food. Turning to Johnny's means you can plant high-quality, trial-proven varieties with confidence and know that our expert staff is ready to help with first-hand knowledge, because we've grown them ourselves. This episode is also brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse investment. Visit rimmel.com today. All right, back to the show. Yeah, and I'm curious about your sales outlets. You do kind of the typical combo of CSA, farmers market, some wholesale. And what's kind of the breakdown of those?
Yeah, that has changed for us every year, pretty much. So when we first started, because of COVID, we were doing like contactless deliveries, like dropping them off on people's front doors.
Veggie boxes.
CSA boxes, yeah. And then we got into a farmer's market that was small scale for us. And so we added that. And then COVID was still kind of happening. And when we were in Alexander, there was a brand new like little co-op that reached out to us, and they're like, we see you at Weaverville Market. We see you on Instagram. Would you be interested in wholesaling to us? And one of the employees that was working there was a farm manager at the now market that we work at every single year, which is East Asheville, is our main farmers market. I think it's probably where we make 70% of our income. And we've gone there, I think, three full seasons, maybe 3.5.
I think this will be our
maybe going into our fourth
year there.
Is that year round farmers market?
That is April to November.
Okay.
And so during the winter, we do a downtown Asheville one that's called River Arts Market. And they are pretty much year round. But we do East Asheville, and then we kind of make the switch in the winter to different sales options. Starting last year, we partnered with a farmer who does a huge, large-scale veggie box, which is Encompass Farm. And it's a friend of ours, Vanna, who runs this. And she reached out and was like also growing on a really small plot of land, doing like no-till work, and said like, how would you feel about kind of running half of my CSA? And so every week we would supply her with 1 to 2 products for the boxes, which kind of felt like a really cool like food hub. And it was a super easy system for us. And then that started a whole other thing, working with our friend Kate at Feed Asheville Farm, who was doing veggie boxes as well, wanting to source locally. So that was a huge plus for us last season. And they just both reached out recently saying like they want to do that again. And so starting this year and very recently, we had to, every year we have a business meeting about what our hopes and dreams are for the season. And I recently just quit my main therapy job. And so I've been wanting to kind of get back into farming a lot more than what I was able to last year. And we kind of decided, let's do East Asheville again, really big. Let's do Vanna with Encompass Farm and Kate with Feed Asheville, and then some of our smaller CSA boxes that we do and small wholesale opportunities. So we're definitely a mix, but we streamline it throughout the week to kind of happen in bulk amounts. Yeah. So it doesn't have us harvesting every day of the week. It's like 2 big days.
Is there one particular sales outlet that you really resonate with the most and would prefer to do 100% if you could?
That's tricky. We do love East Asheville a lot. And we had toyed with the idea of doing that market exclusively, but I don't know. I think we are pretty driven by the community that has supported us, and they've reached out asking for veggie boxes really early, and we're like, man, we just love that so much. We can't like skip the veggie boxes. So yeah.
And I think that it meets like two important criteria for how our business even works. Like we do have one full-time employee most years. And so I feel like if Dan and I were doing it solo, we could swing just doing East Asheville and maybe a small CSA or a small wholesale outlet. But because we have an employee that is super dependable and like returns with us for at least, I think it's like her second or third season working with us part-time throughout the whole thing. It just feels like we do need to have a little bit of an extra outlet. And yeah, we really love the community engagement we get from wholesale boxes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that. This is always a conversation that we're having of the ratio of workers, and our outlets and what we feel driven by. And when we started, I feel like we said yes to everything. And we noticed we don't need to have 3 farmers markets. We could bring all of this vegetable to one market. And so that was East Asheville for us. And then on top of that, just narrowing in on let's only say yes to the things that we really, really enjoy and working with the people that are our friends in our community, which has made a huge difference in not feeling burnt out or just like really enjoying what we do. And something that we started last year, last year, I guess 2 years ago now, we did like a farm to table event on the farm. And it was just inviting our CSA members and our friends and our family out. And I really resonated with it. And I think we felt this connection that there could be in the future a way to just connect people out here, whether it's events or like Friday night gatherings or hangouts. So I think that that's kind of a future goal for us, is transitioning into kind of what we were saying, like how can we do a market garden with events? But always something on the back burner.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important, especially new farmers starting out to sort of dip their toe into all the different outlets and then continuously kind of hone what resonates, what works the best. And it's hard to know that going in all the time, right? So it's sort of a process of learning as you go. And it sounds like you're doing that. So I'm curious about, Ellie, your background in psychology and mental health and the work that you were doing there. And I imagine that was probably hard to step away from that, not just financially, but, I imagine for your interests. Do you find that there were any crossovers that you found within farming and sort of, as a therapist?
Yeah, I think that for me personally, like the farm always felt like they felt like two different entities. And the farm was like my healing journey. And so it was never a place that I felt burnt out on. Like I would come home and be like, okay, I need to get my hands in the dirt. Like I've been talking all day. I just want to focus. Yeah. And either put music on or, just be with the earth instead of being in an office. And so that was a huge thing for me. And recently I had just noticed that I was honestly jealous leaving the house, leaving Daniel here to farm. And so we kind of had to have a financial conversation around, can we kind of go back to our roots and make it work and build the brand where both of us make income from this farm. And I do have a very small clientele through a group practice still. And so I work 2 half days in the week. And so that kind of feels like our added support. And I do love counseling. I love that side of mental health. And and I don't want to lose it. But I think they're for me, it's not my main thing, and it was a little bit too, I was feeling a lot more burnt out doing that full time and not farming. And so we're flip-flopping it and seeing how that feels.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that if you can maintain both, I mean, they're both incredibly important. So
Yeah.
And I'm sure, at least I think that the one informs the other and vice versa in many ways. Yeah. I mean, you can be your own therapist. Like you said, like, oh, am I burning out here?
Yeah.
When do I need to take care of myself?
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes we get asked like, oh, would we turn this place into like a healing outdoor, thing, kind of like meshing the therapeutic world with our farm. And for me, like personally, I like having those two worlds separate. And I think that one nourishes the other versus them building on each other in that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about you, Dan? You had your background in carpentry, and what do I have here? In a certified arborist.
Yeah.
How did that? What point did you become full-time farming? And obviously, I would imagine both of those skills have served your farming career.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I use both of those things, the carpentry and my forestry knowledge, weekly,
all the time
on the farm. It's come in handy. Probably saved us a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, I've also through the years I've taken seasons off to work like a full season on a farm. So I feel like farming's always kind of been in the mix in a way. But I started farming full time. Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, do you have any income still from your carpentry or
arbor? No, like starting 2020, I started farming. That was like my full-time gig.
Yeah.
From then on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that mainly it's found its way. Like all of those skills have become a huge part of how we've made this all happen. And you definitely, I think you're driven by working with trees and stuff in the winter. Like it's definitely like pruning and getting into the apple and orchard world is something that drives you.
Yeah, definitely.
But it all kind of goes back into just purely on the farm.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram you have a beautiful chestnut tree, right?
Ew.
Is that? Yeah, and that must be a beautiful tree to get a chestnut bounty from. Does that happen every year, or is it consistent? Yeah.
The chestnut tree is the center of our property, which I think is pretty cool and magical. It was like the tree that we got married under. It was like the first, when we bought the property, we kind of knew the homeowners and they were like, watch out for these spiky things that are going to drop on you. And so it's definitely connected us to this property. And yeah, we've harvested them each year. We didn't really even know what to do with them the first year. So we roasted them.
Yeah,
we got into it. Now they sell out at markets and everyone wants them.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever had a roasted chestnut before. Like, kind of, it's funny. You hear about it, but then you never have the opportunity to have them.
Yeah.
Typically.
I think moving here was probably my first.
Totally.
Yeah.
Same.
I also saw that you had some pigs and you've expanded a little bit. Is that something you'd like to expand more into, or is that more of kind of a side project?
Yeah, I mean, well, the pigs are, they're for, meat consumption on a personal level and for our family. But we are kind of experimenting with working them into like fallow plots. Having them, plow down old cover crop and work that area for a while, move them to a new area and reseed cover crop there. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah. They've been a joy to have. Quirky little guys.
Yeah, I think the animal side of things was definitely, it definitely started on like our homestead side of things, like wanting locally raised meat and wanting eggs. And this past winter, we've just realized that they are a huge asset to the land and to the soil, and also to decreasing a lot of work with our own hands.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's huge.
Like, definitely a lot less tractor and plowing needs, but also like pulling weeds and just creating plots. They've done it naturally for us. And that's been a huge bonus for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned about, maybe incorporating events in the future. What are your other sort of long-term goals for this farm or this property? Or your farming careers? What sort of, where do you see yourselves in 10 years?
10 years.
Or maybe we'll start with 5. How about 5?
You're talking to two dreamers that have a different goal every day. I think that like recently we've been super like excited and inspired by this property that we're on. And getting into the events, or even just the community engagement. And so I would love to continue to work to get this property established. I feel like we're still constantly working on just making the soil as like rich and healthy, and in return it decreases the amount of work that we have ourselves to do each season. And so, yeah, getting to a fully no-till operation and using the amount of time and labor to get into like an orchard and hosting events. I think whether it's like summer camps for kids.
Yeah, I feel like we are both kind of drawn towards like an educational piece for younger children. I would love to like host. I don't know if it would be like a summer thing, camp or something like that, but just like exposing children to what it looks like to grow vegetables. And that's really important.
Yeah. We had like a Girl Scout troop come out last year, and they got their like local food badge by getting to come out here. And I think it like excited or planted a seed that we can do this all the time if we wanted to, and create these opportunities.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a beautiful vision. So I wish you all the luck with all the dreaming. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a good segue into our lightning round questions. If you're ready for those, there's definitely probably some more dreaming answers in here too. So
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. First one is favorite crop to grow, cook, or eat?
Garlic.
Garlic is yours. I would say potato, carrot, like anything roasted. I crave all the time. Potato, carrots. We fry zucchini. Yeah. I would say I could go on all day about that. But yes, we cook a ton. I don't know how fast these lightning rounds need to be. But
well, you could add, what's your favorite crop to grow then?
Garlic.
Garlic is yours too?
Yeah.
I think favorite crop to grow is carrots. Yeah. It's hard and tricky. They're high reward, high yield, and favorited at all markets. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that one. What gets you up in the morning?
Coffee. I don't know. I feel like I love my morning walk around the farm. It's like kind of I do it with coffee, and I'll walk around and just kind of check in on everything, and it's just like a nice peaceful time to myself that I really look forward to every day.
Yeah, I think that coffee. Dan actually makes me coffee every morning, which is prioritized in this family. But I second the walk, and Dan has a lot of the eyes on the farm and how it's moving and growing. And I think that I hold a lot of the like planning and I enjoy just us sitting down with a coffee after a walk or before a walk and making a list that will truly never get crossed off or end. But it just feels really connecting. So I think that's kind of what gets me up.
I like that. I like how you combine like the practical of like coffee with, the sort of figurative and, existential. And it's very nice. What is the hardest part of farming?
The hardest part of farming, this answer I think has changed a little bit recently for me. I feel like when Dan and I started, just the two of us, it didn't feel like we were managing anyone. Like we were our own bosses and our choices were just like made by us every day. And to that, like it does get really exhausting to continually make decisions. And I think that was a huge part of why we brought on labor. But then we learned that we have to be managers instead of farmers every day. And just that dynamic was probably personally for me, my biggest growth curve in how to do that. And yeah, I think that was definitely the hardest thing when like relinquishing that sense of control in the moment, but also then seeing that you're passing on a skill and you're honing in on a community and creating a crew, which is something that I've always wanted and appreciated when I was on the other end of it, was being part of like a really solid crew. But I didn't know how hard it would be kind of on the outside of it.
Yeah. I think, for me, like working with nature is really hard and probably the hardest thing for me. Sometimes we have really high winds this time of year on occasion, and it's really, really frustrating to try to keep everything pinned down. You'll go through and you'll work across the field trying to put rocks on every piece of row cover. And then when you turn around, everything is blown up and you have to go through and do it again. And it's just like, that is your day is spent, spent doing that. Or sometimes, we've woke up in the middle of the night and we've had landscape fabric and stuff just blowing in the trees, and we of course go outside and try to like get it all back in
tame the masses.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's I'm learning to be a little bit more calm with that, but it's still very, very frustrating at times.
And I think it connects to like the fragility of a small business. Like you just want the work that you do to work and to happen, and to have that sense of follow through. And so seeing it all blowing up in the air is just like slightly debilitating at times.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, letting go is probably the biggest thing to learn as a farmer, right?
Yeah.
Favorite tool?
Collinear hoe.
Yeah.
Really? I'm still so surprised that sometimes that is like, because there are other types of cultivating hoes out there these days. So I'm like, that one is tried and true, I guess.
It is tried and true on this farm.
I love it.
He loves it. And I think every employee that we've had has been so team that hoe instead of being on there, like on the ground, scrunched over. It's changed a lot of the like work ethic and productivity and burnout.
100%. Yeah.
Having that tool. I think for me, the hori.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Our little guy, has gotten weeds out that were a pain in the butt. It's gotten carrots.
We have a bad dock problem.
We have a huge dock problem. Yeah. I think it's the thing that I always want and the thing that I lose the easiest.
What is the favorite music that you listen to while farming?
Different all the time. Recently, I've kind of been on a alternative kick. I feel like I've been into, gone back to my like Andrew Bird, Wilco, Shins roots, but I also really enjoy just like watch house. I don't know, folk music. I feel like I'm on the gentle side of things, and sometimes I come and approach Dan while he's building some beds, and we've got a whole different vibe going on.
Yeah, it really depends on the task and what the weather's like, and kind of drives my music. But I am constantly listening to music while I work. Bluegrass is a big one for me. I also really like hip hop. So
yeah.
Are either of you musicians or singers?
I grew up playing music. Yeah. My family, they're musicians, and, so I play bass and cello and guitar. Mm-hmm.
I am not, but I grew up with a very like musically deep family. And so I think it's in both of us that we definitely can converse all day and talk about music.
How do you relate to that which is out of your control?
I think kind of what we mentioned earlier, for me, it's a sense of like it's the perfect ratio of letting go, but also being just passionate about working in this job. But I think recently finding ways to like have other small interests, or like getting out and disconnecting from the farm a bit, whether it's like going to a brewery at the end of the day, or going on a walk, or running with our dog. It's just an important ratio. Even I think when we really got into farming at first, we saw friends a lot less and saw community other than farmers a lot less. And this past year, we've really prioritized that. We know what we're doing is something that is out of our control, and we need to prioritize having a sense of control within the things that we also love. So
yeah, a lot of self-talk, just telling yourself it's not that big of a deal, like it is a big deal, but it's also, like just letting things slide a little bit is okay sometimes. And that's honestly, like, as we've progressed as a farm, that is, something I'm working on and have gotten better at,
yeah.
But yeah.
And it's hard because we prioritize in our business. We want the farm to look really, really good all the time. And we want our produce to be high quality and it to be a variety of things. And so we have these like really, really high standards. And we also know that our community is a lot more gentle on us than we are to ourselves.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Thank goodness, right? What is it that you long for, and how does that influence how you farm?
I long to live a sustainable life sustainably. I think that this work is just, it can be all-encompassing and it can be all the time. And I think that we more recently have been making decisions on the farm that kind of aren't necessarily like immediate fixes, but more like long-term goals. So like investing in future goals. And I think that that's a huge part of kind of getting back into the homesteading part, but watching how it feeds the farm simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, like, just, like I kind of what I mentioned earlier, like getting back to like having this, I want this farm to be centered around family and love. And I think that's it for me. Yeah.
What do you feel is your gift to give on behalf of people and the land?
We were kind of chatting about this last night. It's so hard to ask yourself what you gift to others. But I think when we had that event a couple years ago, it was so nourishing to just like, we were very nervous to show off this property and show what we've done. And I think watching them just feel in awe of all the work that we've done so quickly was kind of a gift to me and to them. It was like, oh wow, like you guys see all of this work that we do and it's super hard. And also like, I'm so happy that we're able to gift you guys with this like delicious produce and this connection on earth.
Where and how does wildness enter or influence your farming practice?
Yeah, wildness. I mean, try not to make this like too convoluted. I feel like, the idea of wildness is like, like childhood for me, and like being outside and like playing with dirt and things of that sorts. And I think that like farming definitely connects me back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think same. And sometimes like business disconnects me and financials disconnects me. And so reminding myself like the wildness part of it is our inner child, like brings us right back into the joy mode.
Yeah, no, it feels nice if you never have to grow up on a farm, right?
Yeah.
And finally, how will you grow old, or how are you growing old farming?
I think we're taking better care of ourselves slowly in different ways.
We're taking more time off.
Yeah.
We're learning that having people help us, hiring labor is huge. And letting go and letting somebody else take care of the farm for a few days or to a week or whatever. That's so healing for us to like just step away and go be with family or go on a little vacation or something like that. Yeah. So more of that.
And I think too, like when we do have a little bit of like extra income or something, we're like, let's buy a tree that we're going to get to have in 10 years, or let's like, let's plant something that's just like silly and fun. I think it was like Tin Mother's Farm or something that a long time ago, they said they have their own like personal garden for themselves. And I was like, that's crazy. You have like a whole farm to choose from. But recently I've kind of been craving like small little things that we both want. Whether it's like oregano for pizza or whatever, but it's just like, that's been feeding us in fun ways. Gets back into like why we got into it at the first place.
Yeah, no, I mean, my dad is 85 now and he's always had a little, large, we'll say, personal garden with my stepmother, Barbara. So yep, never gets old. Well, thank you both so very much. I've really enjoyed our time together and listening to, how you've grown this farm in such a relatively short amount of time and the intentionality you've put into it. And it's been really great to speak with you. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having us. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this and just connecting with you. And it's fun to reflect. I think it's a really important part of this journey.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much. And happy almost spring in North Carolina in February, right? Today's show was produced by me, Clara Coleman, with support from No-Till Growers. Special thank you to Willie Breeding for the theme music. Thank you to the patrons at patreon.com/No-Till Growers for helping to make this show possible. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.